Was our kiss fake too? The diner owner learned her quiet dishwasher was a billionaire CEO. Lesbian story. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's deeply emotional story about two women whose lives are about to collide across a divide neither of them could have imagined, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It only takes a moment, it is completely free, and it helps us continue bringing you heartfelt, dramatic, and unforgettable stories about courage, second chances, healing, and the unexpected ways love between women can transform a life. Your support truly means the world to us. And before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? Share your city or country in the comments below. I always love seeing how far these stories travel, and where each of you is joining us from. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let us return to our main character, a struggling diner owner named Rachel Bennett, and the quiet woman washing dishes in her kitchen, who was hiding a truth that would eventually make Rachel question everything between them, including the one kiss she had believed was real. "You don't look like someone who washes dishes for a living," I told her on the third night, and the way she looked at me made me wonder if I had just stumbled onto a truth she desperately wanted hidden. My name is Rachel Bennett, and at 41, I thought I had become pretty good at reading people. Running Bennett's Diner in a small Pennsylvania town will teach you that. You learn who wants coffee before they ask, who is pretending everything is fine, and who needs a warm meal more than they need another bill. The diner had belonged to my father before it became mine, along with its faded red booths, stubborn old grill, and a neon sign that buzzed whenever the temperature dropped below 40 degrees. Dad used to say a restaurant wasn't measured by how many people could afford to eat there, but by how many people felt welcome walking through the door. I tried to live by that, even when the numbers told me kindness was becoming expensive. Business had been slipping for months. Food costs were rising, 2 refrigerators needed repairs, and my dishwasher had quit with 20 minutes' notice. Then Claire Sullivan appeared on a rainy Tuesday evening. She stood just inside the entrance wearing a plain navy coat, her light brown hair damp from the rain, looking strangely calm for someone asking a diner owner if she had any work available. "Experience?" I asked. "Enough to learn quickly," she said. "References?" A pause. "Not nearby." I should have said no. Instead, I looked toward the kitchen, where plates were already stacking beside the sink. "Can you wash dishes?" "Yes." "Can you stay until closing?" "As long as you need." That was how Claire became my dishwasher. She barely complained, never arrived late, and somehow made herself useful without being asked. But little things bothered me. Not bad things, strange things. Claire knew exactly how much food we were wasting every night. She reorganized the storage shelves and cut our weekly waste almost in half. When a supplier raised my price on cooking oil, Claire glanced at the invoice and quietly said, "They're counting on you not comparing the regional wholesale rate." I stared at her. "How would you know that?" She dried her hands on a towel. "I used to work around restaurants. That answer should have satisfied me. It didn't. Then came Friday night. We had finally locked the doors after a brutal dinner rush, and I found Claire alone at the counter studying the cost sheet I had left beside the register. She had corrected 3 calculations and circled a distribution fee my accountant had missed. "Claire," I said, "what exactly did you do before this?" Her shoulders stiffened. Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and walked toward the darkened kitchen. I wasn't trying to listen. At least that's what I told myself. Then I heard her voice change. The quiet dishwasher disappeared, replaced by someone calm, precise, and unmistakably accustomed to being obeyed. "No," Claire said softly. "Do not approve the acquisition until I review it." I stood frozen behind the counter. A second later, she turned and saw me watching her, and for the first time since Claire Sullivan had walked into my diner, she looked afraid. For 3 long seconds, neither of us spoke, and the only sound in Bennett's Diner was the refrigerator humming behind the counter. Claire slowly lowered her phone. "You heard that," she said. "It was not really a question. Enough to know you were not discussing dirty plates." I tried to make it sound like a joke, but Claire did not smile. She glanced toward the rain-streaked windows, then back at me. It was something from my previous job. Acquisitions? I asked. Restaurants have complicated businesses behind them. There it was again, an answer technically complete and somehow empty. I wanted to push harder, but something in her expression stopped me. She looked less like someone hiding a scheme and more like someone protecting a wound. So I handed her the cost sheet instead. Then explain why my accountant missed this fee and my dishwasher found it. Claire studied the circled number. Because your distributor increased a service charge by 4% and buried it under a different description. And you noticed that in 5 minutes? 3. I laughed despite myself. For the first time that night, Claire smiled. The next morning I called the distributor. She was right. By noon, the charge had been removed, saving the diner almost $300 a month. I should have become more suspicious. Instead, I became curious. Over the next 2 weeks, I started noticing everything Claire noticed. She remembered that Linda, one of my servers, needed Tuesdays off to drive her mother to medical appointments. She quietly moved heavy supply boxes before our oldest cook arrived. When a college kid came up short on his breakfast bill, Claire slipped the difference beside the register without saying a word. She never performed kindness for an audience. That mattered to me. One snowy Thursday afternoon, an older veteran named Walter came in carrying exactly $4. He had been eating at Bennett's since my father was alive. I brought him meatloaf, mashed potatoes, coffee, and apple pie. Rachel, Claire whispered after I returned to the kitchen. That meal costs more than $4. I know. You are already struggling. I stopped wiping the counter. My father fed Walter for free when he lost his wife. Some debts are not written on invoices. Claire looked through the kitchen window at Walter eating slowly in his usual booth. Something changed in her face. Your father sounds like a good man. He was, and you are keeping his promise. Trying to. Claire became quiet. Then she said something I did not understand until much later. Where I come from, people talk about value all day long, but I do not think they mean this kind. That evening, after everyone left, I found a fresh inventory plan beside the register. Claire had reorganized our ordering schedule without cutting portions or changing the quality of anything we served. The projected savings were nearly $800 a month. I stared at the figures, then found her tying her coat near the kitchen door. You did this? I had time. Claire, people get paid a lot of money for advice like this. Her expression flickered. Sometimes being useful is worth more than being paid. She walked toward the door, but her phone lit up on the counter before she could pick it up. I did not read the message. I only saw the caller identification displayed across the screen. Sullivan Hospitality Group. Claire grabbed the phone immediately. Our eyes met. Another old coworker? I asked. She held my gaze for a moment too long. Something like that, she whispered, and stepped out into the snow, leaving me with the growing certainty that the quietest woman in my diner had the loudest secret I had ever encountered. For the next several days, I told myself Claire's secrets were none of my business, but that became harder to believe every night after the last customer left. Closing time changed Bennett's diner. Without the clatter of plates and conversations from the booths, the place felt smaller, warmer, almost private. Claire would finish the dishes while I counted the register, and somehow we always ended up sitting at the counter afterward with 2 cups of coffee and whatever pie had not sold. One Tuesday it was pecan. Claire took one bite and closed her eyes. That good? I asked. Dangerously good. My father's recipe. Then I understand why you refused to change it. I looked at her. You remember that? I remember most things you tell me. The words were simple, but they stayed with me. Somewhere between inventory sheets and midnight coffee, I had stopped thinking of Claire as the mysterious dishwasher and started looking forward to the moment everyone else went home. She knew I took my coffee with 1 teaspoon of sugar. I knew she hated artificial sweetener and always saved the crispy edge of her hash browns for last. She learned that I had inherited the diner 7 years earlier after my father passed away. I learned that she had spent most of her adult life working so much that birthdays became calendar reminders, and vacations became conference calls from different time zones. Were you married? She asked one night. I shook my head. Almost, once. He wanted me to sell the diner and move to Philadelphia. I wanted him to understand why I could not. So he left? Eventually. Claire stared into her coffee. Maybe he thought loving you meant designing a better life for you. Maybe. I watched steam rise between us. But you cannot love someone by deciding what their better life should be. Claire went completely still. I wondered why my words seemed to land somewhere painful. What about you? I asked. Anyone waiting for you? She gave a quiet laugh without much happiness in it. People have waited for things from me. That was not what I asked. I know. Her eyes met mine. For once she did not hide behind a careful answer. No. There is nobody waiting for me. I felt an unexpected sadness at that. Claire was capable, thoughtful, and somehow lonely even when standing 3 feet away from another person. A few nights later, the temperature dropped to 23 degrees, and her old car refused to start. I found her in the parking lot staring at the engine as snow collected on her coat. I can drive you home, I said. I will manage. Claire, you cannot reorganize your way out of a dead battery. She laughed, and I realized how much I liked being the reason. She finally agreed. During the 15-minute drive, she directed me toward a modest furnished apartment on the edge of town. Before getting out, she hesitated. Rachel, why did you hire me? I needed a dishwasher. You had no references, you knew almost nothing about me. You looked like someone who needed a chance. Claire stared through the windshield at the falling snow. Most people want proof before they trust someone. Trust is not the same as being foolish, I said. You still have to earn the rest. She turned toward me, and something unspoken passed between us. I would like to, she said softly. The next evening, Claire arrived early carrying 2 coffees, mine already prepared exactly the way I liked it. She placed one beside the register. Our fingers touched briefly when I reached for it, and neither of us moved immediately. It was nothing dramatic, just one quiet second in an old Pennsylvania diner. But my heart reacted before my common sense could explain why. Then Claire stepped back, almost startled by the moment. Her phone began ringing inside her coat. She looked at the screen, silenced it, and returned to the kitchen. I caught only the name before the display went dark. Sullivan Corporate Counsel. And suddenly I wondered whether Claire was earning my trust, or whether I was giving it to a woman whose real life was still waiting somewhere outside my diner. The call from Sullivan Corporate Counsel stayed in my mind longer than I wanted to admit, but 3 days later, I had a much bigger problem. I arrived at Bennett's Diner before sunrise and found water spreading across the kitchen floor beneath our oldest refrigerator. By 6:30, a repair technician had delivered the verdict. The compressor was finished, and replacing it would cost nearly $4,000. I stared at the estimate until the numbers blurred. $4,000 might not sound like the end of the world to some people, but when you own a diner operating on narrow margins, it can feel like a locked door with no key. Claire arrived at 7 and immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked. I handed her the estimate. Her expression barely changed, but something sharpened behind her eyes. How quickly do you need the refrigerator? Yesterday. I might know someone who can help. Claire. What? I appreciate it, but I am not looking for someone to rescue me. She hesitated. There is nothing wrong with accepting help. No, there is not. But there is a difference between help and having someone solve your life for you. The words came out harder than I intended. Claire looked down at the estimate. You really believe that? I have to. I leaned against the counter. This place is more than a business to me. My father opened it 32 years ago. During bad winters, he fed families who could not pay. When the textile plant closed, he gave people coffee and breakfast while they searched the classifieds. Bennett's is where people came when they needed somewhere to belong. Claire glanced toward the red booths beyond the kitchen window. And now you are risking everything to preserve that. Maybe. Why? Because not everything valuable should be measured by what somebody would pay for it. Claire became silent. I had seen that look before, as if something I said had reached a part of her life she never discussed. Where I used to work, she finally said, everything had a price. Buildings, brands, contracts, even loyalty sometimes. That sounds lonely. Her eyes lifted to mine. It was. For the first time, I did not ask another question. Instead, I made coffee. We spent the afternoon rearranging supplies, borrowing refrigerator space from the bakery 2 doors down, and calling repair companies. Claire found a refurbished commercial unit 40 miles away for less than half the original estimate. I negotiated delivery. Together, we solved it. That mattered more than I expected. After closing, we sat in our usual seats with one piece of cherry pie between us. "You were right," Claire said. "About what? Helping someone does not mean taking over." I smiled. "That sounds suspiciously like personal growth." She laughed softly. Then her expression changed. "Rachel, there is something I should tell you." My stomach tightened. "All right." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I waited. Finally, she whispered, "I am afraid that if you know everything about me, you will stop seeing me the way you do now." I looked at this strange, guarded woman who had somehow become the person I waited for every morning. "Claire, I do not even know what you have," I said. "I only know who you are when nobody is watching." Her eyes filled with an emotion I could not name. She reached across the counter and rested her hand over mine. I could have pulled away. I did not. The diner seemed impossibly quiet. Claire moved closer, slowly enough to give me every chance to change my mind, and I met her halfway. Our kiss was brief and gentle, more question than answer, but when we separated, neither of us looked away. Then Claire's phone vibrated against the counter. She glanced at the screen, and all the warmth disappeared from her face. "What is it?" I asked. Claire slowly withdrew her hand. "Something I should have told you before that happened." Claire stared at her phone as if the screen had just reminded her that another life existed beyond the diner walls. "I need a little time," she said. Before I could ask what that meant, she picked up her coat and left. The bell above the door gave its familiar little chime, and I stood behind the counter wondering how something so ordinary could suddenly sound like goodbye. Claire did not come in the next morning. At 9:15, she sent a message saying she had an urgent personal matter and would explain everything soon. I told myself not to worry. By lunchtime, I had checked my phone 12 times. Then, shortly after 2, Linda called from the dining room. "Rachel, you might want to see this." The television above the counter was tuned to a business news program. I almost walked past it. Then I heard a name that stopped me cold. Sullivan Hospitality Group announced today that Chief Executive Officer Claire Sullivan will resume public duties following several weeks away from corporate headquarters. I looked up. Claire was on the screen. Not my Claire in a faded apron with her hair loosely tied back. This woman wore a tailored navy suit and stood behind a polished podium beneath the logo of Sullivan Hospitality Group. The caption identified her as Claire Sullivan, billionaire executive and controlling shareholder of one of the country's largest privately held hospitality companies. For several seconds, I genuinely could not understand what I was seeing. Linda looked from the television to me. "Rachel, is that not your dishwasher?" My mouth went dry. "Apparently not." The report continued. Sullivan Hospitality owned luxury hotels, restaurant chains, commercial properties, and development projects across several states. Then the reporter mentioned a proposed acquisition involving a redevelopment district in our county. My stomach dropped. I remembered the phone call. "Do not approve the acquisition until I review it." Suddenly, every strange detail returned at once. The invoices, the inventory plan, the corporate counsel, the way Claire spoke about value and loyalty. Even her modest apartment now felt like another carefully chosen piece of a life I had never actually understood. The front door opened. Cold air swept across the room. Claire walked in wearing the same navy suit I had just seen on television. She stopped when she noticed the screen, then she looked at me. "Rachel." I turned the television off. The diner became painfully quiet. "How much?" I asked. Confusion crossed her face. "What?" "How much of what I know about you is real? More than you think. You told me you worked around restaurants." "I do." "You wash dishes in my kitchen while owning companies that buy restaurants." I never wanted to deceive you. I almost laughed, but nothing about the moment felt funny. "Then what did you want?" Claire stepped closer. I needed to know who I was without my position, without people knowing what I could give them. "So you came here pretending to be someone else." "I never lied about my name. You hid everything that gave the name meaning." That landed. She looked down. Yes. I thought about our late-night coffee, Walter's dinner, the snow, the refrigerator, and the quiet moment when I had trusted her enough to kiss her. Is Sullivan Hospitality trying to buy property around here? Claire hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any answer could have. The company has been evaluating several properties in the district, she admitted. Including this diner? Not directly, but the surrounding redevelopment could affect it. I stepped back. And you knew? I learned the full scope after I started working here. But you did not tell me. I was trying to stop it before it became your problem. There it was. The exact mistake we had discussed only days earlier. She had decided what my better life should look like without asking me. Claire reached toward me, then stopped herself. Rachel, what happened between us was not part of any plan. I looked at her and realized that was exactly what frightened me. I could forgive a billionaire for wearing an apron. I could even understand wanting to escape a world where everyone knew her bank account before they knew her heart. But I did not know how to separate the woman who remembered my coffee from the woman who had hidden an entire life from me. Who are you? I whispered. Claire's eyes held mine. I am still the woman you knew. I shook my head. No, Claire. You are the woman I knew, and the woman you made sure I did not. Claire stood on the other side of the counter, still wearing the navy suit that suddenly made the distance between us feel wider than the entire diner. I should have told you, she said. Yes, I wanted to. Wanting to tell the truth is not the same as telling it. She lowered her eyes. For once, there was no polished answer waiting behind her silence. When I left the company, I was exhausted, she said. Every conversation felt like a transaction. People laughed before I finished jokes. They agreed with ideas they hated. People I dated knew what my family owned before they knew what kind of coffee I drank. I remembered preparing her coffee every night without knowing any of that. So this was an experiment? I asked. No, then what was I? Her face changed. Rachel, you were the first person in years who expected nothing from me, except that I show up on time and do my job. Because you made sure I did not know there was anything else to expect. Claire closed her eyes briefly. You are right. That answer surprised me. I had prepared myself for excuses, not agreement. I thought hiding my position would let someone see the real me, she continued. But I understand now that I was controlling what you were allowed to see. I looked toward the kitchen window. I could almost see us there again, sharing pie after closing, laughing about broken appliances and terrible customers. Those memories still felt warm. That was what made everything harder. The night we fixed the refrigerator, I said, you told me helping someone does not mean taking over. I remember. But you were still doing it. You decided what information I could handle. You decided you would stop the redevelopment before I ever knew about it. You decided that protecting me from the truth was somehow kindness. Claire swallowed. I was afraid. Of what? That you would look at me exactly the way you are looking at me now. My voice softened despite myself. You never gave me the chance to prove otherwise. Silence settled between us. Then the question I had been avoiding finally came out. Was our kiss fake too? Claire looked almost startled. No. How am I supposed to know? Because that was the one moment when I was not thinking about the company, my name, the acquisition, or what anyone wanted from me. Her voice trembled slightly. That kiss was the first thing in a very long time that felt completely real. Part of me wanted to believe her immediately. That frightened me more than anger ever could. Real feelings do not erase dishonest choices, I said. Claire nodded slowly. No, they do not. She reached behind herself and removed the diner apron she had apparently brought beneath her coat. She folded it carefully and placed it on the counter between us. The sight of that faded apron hurt more than the expensive suit. I am sorry, Rachel. I believe you are. Hope appeared in her eyes. I hated what I had to say next. But being sorry does not rebuild trust in one conversation. The hope faded, but she nodded. What do you need? I looked at the woman I cared about and finally understood that love could exist beside disappointment without magically curing it. I need you to leave. Claire stood perfectly still. Then she picked up her coat. I will make sure the acquisition does not touch this diner. Do not. She turned. Do not save me because you feel guilty, I said. If you ever cared about me, Let me make my own choices. Claire stared at me for a long moment. All right. Then she walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, she looked back. For what it is worth, Rachel, the woman who washed dishes here was real. I looked at the folded apron. Then maybe she needs to teach the chief executive officer who she was. Claire left, and for the first time since she had entered my life, I did not wonder what secret she was hiding. I wondered what she would do now that there were none left. For the next 10 days, Claire did exactly what I had asked her to do. Nothing. No flowers appeared at the diner. No mysterious check arrived in the mail. No lawyer called offering to erase my debts. I hated how much that silence made me miss her. Every morning, I noticed the empty space beside the sink. Every night, I made 1 cup of coffee instead of 2. Then, on a Monday afternoon, a plain envelope arrived from Sullivan Hospitality Group. My first instinct was to throw it away. Instead, I opened it after closing. Inside was a notice addressed not only to me, but to every independent business owner in our district. Sullivan Hospitality was withdrawing from the proposed redevelopment acquisition. More importantly, the company was releasing the preliminary zoning, traffic, and commercial impact information it had gathered so local owners could review the potential changes themselves. There was no offer to purchase Bennett's Diner. No special protection for me. No money. Just information and a sentence explaining that each property owner deserved the opportunity to make an informed decision independently. I read that sentence 3 times. The next morning I called Martha Reynolds, who owned the bakery 2 doors down. She had received the same packet. So had the hardware store, the barber shop, and the family that owned the small grocery on the corner. Claire had not saved my diner. She had given all of us the same thing I had accused her of taking from me. A choice. What I did not know then was how much that decision had cost her inside Sullivan Hospitality. I learned later that her board had expected her to approve the acquisition. The project promised strong returns and years of expansion. Claire did not cancel it because Bennett's Diner stood in the way. She canceled it because the company had been negotiating around people instead of with them. A community is not an empty square on a development map, she reportedly told her leadership team. If our growth requires people to lose their voice, then we are measuring success incorrectly. When Linda showed me the quote in the local newspaper, I had to look away. It sounded like Claire, not the billionaire on television, the woman who had watched Walter eat a $4 dinner and quietly tried to understand why kindness could matter more than profit. That evening, I found her folded apron beneath the counter. I had never moved it. I ran my hand across the faded fabric and remembered something my father once told me. Apologies are words, but change is what those words cost you afterward. Claire had finally understood that she could not use power to manufacture forgiveness, and I was beginning to understand something uncomfortable about myself. I had been so determined not to be rescued that sometimes I treated every offer of help like an attempt to control me. Independence had protected me for years, but protection could become a wall if you never opened a door. Still, understanding Claire did not mean trust had magically returned. Love was not a receipt you could reverse when something went wrong. Maybe it was closer to the diner itself, repaired slowly, one broken thing at a time. 2 weeks after Claire left, snow began falling just before closing. I flipped the sign to closed and started wiping the counter. At 8:47, someone knocked softly on the glass. I looked toward the door. Claire stood outside beneath the old neon sign, snow resting on the shoulders of a simple gray coat. No driver waited behind her. No corporate team. No expensive suit. She held nothing in her hands. I unlocked the door but did not open it immediately. Through the glass, our eyes met. Claire did not reach for the handle. She simply waited for me to decide whether she was allowed inside. And somehow, that small act told me she had finally learned the difference between opening a door for someone and walking through it without permission. I opened the door and stepped aside. Claire entered slowly, brushing snow from the shoulders of her gray coat, but she did not move farther than the entrance until I locked the door again. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me in." I nodded toward the counter. "Coffee?" A small, surprised smile appeared. "I would like that." I poured 2 cups and remembered her order without thinking. Claire noticed, but neither of us mentioned it. We sat in our old seats with an empty stool between us, a distance of barely 3 feet that somehow represented everything we had lost. I received the information from Sullivan Hospitality, I said. So did everyone else. That was the point. You could have bought this building and handed me the deed. I considered it. I raised an eyebrow. For about 30 seconds, she admitted. Then I heard your voice telling me exactly how much you would hate it. I almost smiled. At least you learned something while washing dishes. More than I learned in some boardrooms. The refrigerator hummed behind us. Outside, snow softened the street beneath the neon glow. Claire wrapped both hands around her coffee. I did not come here to ask you to forgive me. That surprised me. Then why are you here? To apologize without expecting a reward. She took a breath. I told myself I hid my identity because I wanted someone to know the real me. That sounded noble enough that I believed it. But the truth is less flattering. I was afraid. I wanted to control the conditions under which someone could care about me. I said nothing. Claire continued. I tested people because I was terrified they might fail me. I never stopped to consider how unfair the test itself was. You cannot test someone's love without lying to them about the exam, I said. I know that now. Her answer came without defense. And I am sorry I made choices for you. About the company. About what you deserve to know. About us. Something inside me loosened, but forgiveness was not a switch. I was angry because you took away my choice, I said. But I have been thinking too. Sometimes I confuse accepting help with surrendering control. My father taught me to stand on my own feet. I think somewhere along the way I started believing I had to stand alone. Claire looked at me carefully. You do not. Neither do you. Silence followed, but this time it did not feel empty. I reached beneath the counter and pulled out her folded apron. Claire stared at it. You kept that? Apparently I am sentimental about restaurant uniforms. She laughed, and hearing that sound inside Bennett's again made my chest ache in a gentler way. Claire touched the apron but did not take it. Rachel, I meant what I said about the kiss. I know. Her eyes lifted. You believe me? I believe your feelings were real. I paused. Trust is the part we still have to work on. Claire nodded. However long that takes. I slid the apron back beneath the counter. You are not getting your old job back tonight. Fair enough. But you can finish your coffee. Another smile. Smaller this time, but real. We talked until nearly 11. Not about romance. Not about forgiveness. We talked about her company, my debts, her childhood, my father, and every ordinary truth we should have shared before anything complicated happened between us. When Claire finally stood to leave, she stopped beside the door. Good night, Rachel. Good night, Claire. She stepped into the snow, then turned back. There was no promise between us yet, no easy ending waiting under the neon sign. But for the first time since I met her, Claire Sullivan walked away from Bennett's Diner, knowing that I had seen the whole woman, dishwasher and chief executive officer alike. And for the first time, I realized I might someday choose her anyway. 3 months later, Bennett's Diner still had the same faded red booths, the same stubborn grill, and the same neon sign that buzzed whenever the temperature dropped below 40 degrees. But some things had changed. Business was stronger. I had negotiated a better supplier contract using what Claire had taught me, and the neighborhood businesses had formed an association, so future developers would have to speak with us, instead of around us. Claire never offered me money again. Instead, she offered time. Some evenings she stopped by after work, still dressed like the chief executive officer everyone else knew, and sat at the counter while I closed the register. Other nights she arrived in jeans and helped Walter figure out the crossword puzzle in the newspaper. We rebuilt trust through ordinary things. She told me when she had difficult meetings. I told her when the diner had a bad week. She stopped protecting me from uncomfortable truths, and I stopped treating every helping hand like a threat to my independence. Somewhere along the way, I realized love was not about finding someone who never disappointed you. It was about discovering whether two people could face disappointment honestly and become better because of it. Claire changed too. Sullivan Hospitality created a new policy requiring community consultation before major redevelopment projects moved forward. Small business owners were offered meetings before proposals reached final approval. Claire told me the policy was not charity. It is better business to listen before deciding, she said. Imagine that. A billionaire learning something from a diner owner. You learned it from a dishwasher, I reminded her. She smiled. She was surprisingly wise. One Friday evening in early spring, I flipped the sign to closed and found Claire waiting in our usual booth. I had been saving something for weeks. I walked behind the counter, reached underneath, and pulled out her old faded apron. Claire laughed when she saw it. I thought you retired that thing. I considered framing it. I placed it on the table. Your old dishwasher position has been filled. Claire pretended to look disappointed. That is unfortunate. I had excellent references this time. I heard your former employer was difficult. Terrible woman. Very demanding about punctuality. I sat across from her. The humor faded into something quieter. Claire touched the apron with her fingertips. Rachel, are we all right? Months earlier, I would have searched for certainty before answering. Now I understood that relationships were not contracts with guaranteed outcomes. They were choices made repeatedly, especially after the easy illusions disappeared. We are honest, I said. That is better than all right. Claire reached across the table, stopping halfway, leaving the rest of the distance to me. I placed my hand in hers. That small gesture meant more than grand promises ever could. She had learned not to cross boundaries without invitation, and I had learned that opening my life to someone did not mean losing ownership of it. So if the dishwasher job is taken, Claire asked, why did you keep the apron? I smiled. To remind us where we met. Then I nodded toward the empty seat across from me. The job is filled, but this seat is still yours, if you want it. Claire looked at me with the same quiet expression I had noticed on the rainy night she first walked through my door, except now there was nothing hidden behind it. I want it, she said. Outside, cars passed beneath the warm spring rain. Inside, Bennett's diner smelled like coffee and cherry pie, and I finally understood what my father had tried to teach me all those years ago. The true value of a place was never in the building, the equipment, or the price someone offered for it. Its value lived in the people who felt safe enough to enter as they were, tell the truth about who they were, and still find a seat waiting for them. Claire and I had started with secrets, but what survived was something far simpler and far more valuable. We finally knew each other completely, and with nothing left to pretend, we chose each other anyway.